Hello everyone and welcome to a new IK video. This is Kincaid and I'm gonna talk about the march that I'm using right now. Probably the best march that you can get in season 2 if you're a mid spender just like myself, or even a low spender but you gotta prepare and grind a bit more. So this is the march that I'm using right now, and I'm gonna talk what's the plan for the future and what are the ideal skills to use for this march. So previously in season 1 I used a mixed march. It was the better choice to use considering that all the skills that is available in Tower of Knowledge. However, right now, I don't think mixed marches are a thing in Season 1 right now, since they lack a lot of skills, and they just added the weakening curse into Season 1 right now, into level 39, I think. So I don't think that mixed march will be the main meta in Season 1 anymore. Anyway, let's talk about this march for now. I'm using Himiko, Yisun Chen, and I'm using Ken Emperor, and I'm using Charles. The reason I'm using Himiko is that she is an insane damage dealer. Of course, she applies a lot of damage, and I have the perfect artifact for her. And of course, let's talk about her control, the voids that she sends an enemy to in the back line for over 6 seconds. And just the fact that she's a Shadow Immortals means that she counters all the regular elements, which means that she deals more 25% more damage to the regular elements, whether it is fire, shadow, fire, lightning, water, or even wind. So this is the main reason I'm using Himiko, and of course her artifacts increases her ult's damage by 30%. So that's mainly why. And her specialization level right now is at level 6. And I've invested a lot on Himiko right now. So, and actually it is worth the investment. And as for Ken Emperor, the reason I'm using Ken Emperor is that I'm using assist on him. And the reason I'm not using Zenobia because I don't really like the fact that I'm using assist on a healer, because the amount of troops that you have is the less the amount of heals that you can apply. And just the fact that you are using assist on Immortal, it is bound to lose more troops than any other Immortal because it is protecting the other Immortal in the back row. So using assist on Zenobia is not really a good idea, and using assist on Ken Emperor doesn't really matter because his skill doesn't get affected by how low his troops is. He simply applies wounds and increases the March's attack speed. I don't really care about the attack speed increase in this situation here because I'm not using either Alex or Hani, and the cleave effects also doesn't matter because I'm not even using any other wind immortals beside him. But the main reason I'm using Ken Emperor is just the wounds and how easy it is to develop his specialization tree. If you look here, I have him maxed already, and the specialization I'm using battle excitation. And if you look here, it increases the other back row immortal energy at the beginning of the fight by 200 and increases their damage by 40%. This is an insane buff, and this is why support immortals right now are so good to use, and you need to make use of the support immortals meta before they do any changes regarding this specific specialization tree. So just these are the reasons I'm using Ken Emperor, how easy it is to develop his specialization tree and the wounds that he applies, and of course I can freely use assist on him. Yisun Chen is one of the best defensive immortals in the game. His skill is so simple yet so efficient. He reduces all the damage received for, I think, for all immortals by 30%, or at least 3 immortals. I'm not really sure about this, but I need to test it more. But he reduces the damage received in an area by 30%, and this is actually very efficient. And if you have his exclusive artifact, it increases the heals received, I think, by a certain amount. His exclusive artifact is easily obtained from this shop here. Let's check his artifact effects. Within the area of guard, devotion will have 30% increase. Yeah, 30% healing increase in an area. As for Charles, of course, Charles, one of the best defensive immortals in the game as well, thanks for his ultimate skill. Now, the difference between Charles and Yisun Chen is that Yisun Chen doesn't really need to be strong or have a lot of troops in order for his skill to be efficient. His skill just simply reduces the damage by 30%. However, for Charles, he applies shields to the light team, and his shields, the absorb rate is up to 400%, and there is a passive in the skill itself. Their shield absorption increased by additional 150% for 6 seconds. So this means that the more troops Charles has, the more efficient his shields will be. So if he received some damage in the fight, that means that it will affect his shields. This is why I'm not using any kind of defensive skills that can protect other immortals. I'm not using assist or I'm not using guard on Charles because it is a terrible idea to use these skills on Charles. I'm making sure that Charles does have a lot of HP at all times. So sometimes I switch between energy suppression and physical shield because I want Charles to survive as much as possible for his shields to take effect. So these are all the immortals that I'm using. As for the skills for Himiko, which is the most important in the March, I'm using Fighting Master because sometimes I'm fighting against other Himiko marches. I don't want her to be stuck in the void. I want her to cast her skills at all times. And I'm using concentration to increase her magical damage by 30%. I'm using annihilation, probably one of the best skills that you can use in season 1 and season 2 because it's free. It does apply a lot of damage though. As for Kennember, I'm using assist as I explained earlier to protect Himiko. I'm using magical shield because as I mentioned, I go a lot against other Himikos or on any other mages, so magical shields helps a lot for Kennember to survive. I'm using malice to decrease the damage for the opponents. Sometimes malice and magical shield are completely useless though if I'm playing against a mixed march or a physical team march, so these two skills will be kind of useless. I'm using Vitality Touch just because I have the skill. It is OP, it does a lot of healings and increases the defense. So if you have it, just use it on Charles. And I'm not using it on Kennembearer because Kennembearer, as I mentioned, will lose troops, hence his heals will be less. I'm using Weakness to help Himiko deals or apply as much critical damage as possible, and I'm using Energy Suppression because it slows down the enemy from gaining energy. I'm using Physical Shield, and as I mentioned, sometimes I swap between Energy Suppression and Physical Shield between Ascension and Charles, depends on the situation, and I'm using Oaken Guard because simply the best skill to counter mixed marches if there are any. And I'm using Rage Placing to help Himiko cast her skill as soon as we get into the fight. Same for Charles and Ascension as well. I don't think Kennember need the skill because he has a lot of energy regain speed. This is the march I'm using as for the plan for the future. I'm planning to replace Charles with a different immortal, and this immortal is Ragnar. I did have an old video in my channel talking about Ragnar and how he increases the magical damage received by the enemy team by up to 30%. And imagine Himiko deals a lot of damage and increasing this damage by another 30%. So this is gonna be an interesting march to see in the future. I do have a lot of boxes that I've got from King of the Hell, and I'm just waiting to get into Conquest and get to. I think you can obtain his shards from the Lucky Wheel, but you need to spend a lot of gems. I'm just waiting to max him out and replace him with my Charles, and I will make a lot of videos on this march and how it goes in the Conquest season. But mainly this will be my march for a very long run. I'm not planning to get in any Chaos marches or any Chaos Immortals anytime soon. I do plan to get some red skills, probably what was its name, Infinite Firepower, or maybe Energy Mastery, or maybe the broken skill, the defensive skill, what was its name, Life Protection. Maybe one of the 3 skills or 2 out of 3 skills. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, Ragnar is my go-to immortal, and I'll replace him with Charles, and it's gonna be very interesting to see how this march will be in Conquest. Anyway, this is it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any question, remember to leave it down below in the comments. This will be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.